Today we're going to be looking at a pair of mid-sized, reversible seat, four-wheel swivel wheel models, the Bugaboo Fox2 and the Uppababy Cruz V2. Comparing these two has been high on our list ever since the Cruz V2 dropped and revealed itself to be a much greater rework than we'd originally thought it to be. Basically a scrapping of the urban-only concept that Uppababy had made with the original Cruz in favor of producing a slightly smaller copy of their Cadillac model, the Vista. Uppababy has long been a direct rival of Bugaboo, especially for the American market, and to me these changes land the Cruz V2 right alongside the Fox2, aimed very much at the same market demographics, and intended to fulfill more or less the same set of consumer requirements. Yet despite this, design-wise, these are actually very different models. So let's have a look then, and examine the similarities and differences between them in relation to comfort, functionality, performance and mechanics, as well as which variations in lifestyle might make one a better choice over the other. We'll start off with the Fox2. The Fox2 clocks in at right under 10 kilos, at least in its lightest configuration, and folds down to 47 by 60 by 90 centimeters, with the seat attached. It can take 22 kilos in the seat, and 10 kilos in its underslung shopping basket. The dimensions of the Fox2 seat are decent size-wise, and should be sufficiently comfortable for most children up until around 3.5 years old or so, before beginning to feel a tad cramped. As they've always done with their full-size models, the Fox2 uses a bucket seat, meaning that the entire frame reclines, rather than the leg rest and seat back shifting their orientation in relation to the baseboard. Canopy-wise, the Fox2 provides excellent sun coverage as a result of the extra extendable portion zipped into the rear of the canopy, that they originally developed in the Buffalo Donkey era, and which has subsequently been copied by a wide variety of manufacturers. As Bugaboo's current premier model, the Fox2 follows the tradition of including both the seat and bassinet with purchase, both attachable to the same frame. And despite there being some work involved in the initial assembly and swapping from the bassinet to the seat, user experience with Bugaboo seats and bassinets on their full-size models has been overwhelmingly positive over the years. And these elements on the Fox2 represent a fine-tuning of textile details, the harness, and other factors over a long succession of models. When it comes to general functionality and ease of use, how comfortable the Fox2 will feel to use is going to be different for different people. Bugaboo are innovators when it comes to comfort and luxury functions, and they're prone to try a lot of different crazy ideas with every model that they launch. This approach has paid off in the past, and as with the extendable canopy that I mentioned earlier, 360-degree bumper bars, the single lever for adjusting the seat frame, and multiple innovations related to the harness and other textile elements first appeared on Bugaboo models and were later copied by the rest of the market to the extent that I would now call them industry standards. Thus, while the majority of functions and activation mechanisms on the Fox2 are built from a wide repertoire of already streamlined and perfected mechanisms from previous models, and will generally feel easy and intuitive as a result, there is one major exception: the fold. With Fox models, they're trying to make a new concept work: a central folding mechanism that is activated from two sides in order to facilitate an easier standing fold. In my opinion, they haven't gotten it quite right yet, and for this reason, there's a bit of a learning curve. If you learn to do it right, it's fine. If you don't, it might make you hate the model. When it comes to longevity, the strength of the Fox2's mechanical design in relation to wear over time, this focus on functionality-oriented innovation generally works against them, as does the other chief factor dictating Bugaboo design, as far as I see it, which is weight. The Fox2 then, as with most Bugaboo models, wants to do two things simultaneously: cram a wide variety of useful, luxurious, ergonomic functions onto the lightest chassis possible. They do this with finesse, with expertise. Every element is fitted precisely, to the millimeter. And yet, even so, it's simply impossible to design a stroller in this way and not wind up with something a bit more fragile than those products coming from other top-end manufacturers who take the opposite approach, emphasizing strength of materials and simplicity of mechanisms instead. For this reason, I would judge the Fox2 not necessarily as having poor mechanical longevity, but definitely as a sort of model that you need to take extra care to treat right if you want it to last. You should lubricate its mechanisms with silicone spray, clean sand and grit out of the wheel housings, and at all costs, avoid forcing or overloading the model, especially the handle. Okay, we'll finish off looking at the Fox2 then by talking about its chief positive factor, which is its drivability, meaning predominantly its ability to tackle rougher terrain, but also involving ease of maneuverability and how well the driving-related mechanical elements will hold up over time. For this type of model, in this size and weight class, the Fox2 is simply unparalleled. There are several factors involved in this, but the most important are a combination of much larger than average front wheels, multi-layered suspension, and what Bugaboo refers to as power steering, which is a combination of their innovative use of a raised ridge running down the center of the tires, and an overall angle of the chassis, which is narrowest at the handle and widest at the bottom, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. The Fox2 won't handle all off-road conditions, of course, but it will outperform all comparable strollers that I've found. And on smooth terrain, you can virtually steer the model with just your pointer finger. Okay then, let's move on and check out the Cruz V2. The Cruz V2 weighs 11.5 kilos and folds down to 42 by 58 by 84 centimeters with the seat attached. It can carry 22.6 kilos in the seat and 13.7 kilos in the shopping basket. In comparison with the Fox 2 then, while the Cruz V2 is a tad heavier, it folds smaller and also has slightly better weight capacities both in the seat and the basket. As far as the seat is concerned, it might not look it, but the Cruz V2 is actually longer than the Fox 2 by about 7 centimeters, measured by adding together the length of the leg rest, baseboard, backboard, and the space beneath the canopy. This is not enough to raise the maximum age for a child sitting comfortably in the Cruz V2 much beyond that of the Fox 2, but it's still something, especially if your kid is a little on the larger side. Like the Fox 2, the Cruz V2 also uses the bucket seat design and includes an extendable canopy, but unlike the Fox 2, it also has a hinged adjustable leg rest. In my opinion, since the seat back does not recline independently of the overall frame, the adjustable leg rest won't make a big difference to child comfort, but it's important to note that it is one of the main factors in the Cruz V2's more compact fold. When it comes to folding, the Cruz V2 is far easier to use, of course, and the mechanisms involved are a good deal sturdier as well, both by virtue of design simplicity and in terms of the materials used in their construction. Though, do note that, unlike the Fox 2, the model won't fold with the seat attached in the reverse position or with the bassinet. Beyond folding, Uppababy is no slacker when it comes to building their activation mechanisms in an ergonomic and user-friendly manner. And while it might take a tad more pressure to depress the buttons or pull the levers on the Cruz V2 versus those on the Fox 2, the difference is really negligible. And again, as with folding, internal differences in how these mechanisms are built has a definite impact on the potential for problems down the road. Thus, when it comes to mechanical sturdiness and the overall longevity of the design, the Cruz V2 is the clear winner for me, both as a result of materials as well as rugged simplicity of construction. I feel that this is the most glaring area of difference between these two models, with the Fox 2 really taking the cake in relation to how far Bugaboo can go in cramming a micro-complexity of plastic components into their models. The result of this then is that the Cruz V2 can be treated a bit harsher than the Fox 2 and still be expected to hold up well several years down the road. While with the Fox 2, there's a higher possibility for eventually developing problems. This sturdiness with the Cruz V2 should also be looked at in concert with its smaller and easier fold in order to get a complete picture. It's a tough, no-nonsense type of model, while the Fox 2 is a bit more of a luxury yacht, more complex, more spread out, more things to consider when using. As far as driving is concerned, while the Cruz V2 is excellent in relation to the wider market, with good suspension, decent-sized wheels for its class, and a solid rigid structure that will tolerate bumps and jarring without risk of sustaining significant wear, it is outperformed by the Fox 2, in particular when it comes to rougher terrain. I've already listed the primary design elements that make the Fox 2 special in this regard, but in order to illustrate the difference between these two models when it comes to drivability, let's just say that the Cruz V2 will handle dirt roads, gravel, lawns, and so on just fine, but if it gets really bumpy, you'll feel it. The Fox 2, by contrast, will not only feel smoother and better suspended over this sort of terrain, but will also manage just fine once you start hitting actual obstacles that you need to make your way over, like the occasional tree root or areas of nature where a lot of small branches and pine cones and such are strewn in the grass. You shouldn't use it over this sort of terrain as an all-day, everyday affair due to the generally weaker chassis, which will loosen over time if you do. But as an occasional, suddenly finding yourself in this sort of a situation kind of thing, the Fox 2 will definitely leave you better prepared. So, how would I recommend choosing between the Fox 2 and the Cruz V2 then? To start with, I would say that the common factors that would land you looking at these two models in the first place would probably be the reversible seat and the ability to fold the model with the seat attached. Here you need to decide whether folded size and ease of fold is more important, such as if you have a very car-based lifestyle, or whether the ability to fold with the reverse seat or potentially with the bassinet is more important. Secondly, you should consider terrain. For most urban and light suburban lifestyles, the Cruz V2 will function just fine. But if you live in a city with a lot of cobblestones, plan to visit parks with somewhat rougher terrain, or have a lot of snow in the winters, then the Fox 2 will definitely be better. Thirdly, I would always recommend looking at models in the store before purchasing, if possible. And when you do, try folding these models, removing the seat frame, and just generally testing the mechanisms. During this testing, with these two models, it's important to get a sense of how much more fiddly the Fox 2 may feel to use, and sense in your hands for general differences in looseness and how sturdy the activation mechanisms feel in comparison to each other. The models in the store are new, right? So this is the tightest they're going to feel. So you need to think about how these models might feel down the road, once they've loosened up a bit, and whether your lifestyle, in terms of terrain, carrying, how often you'll need to fold your stroller and so on, will likely affect these models in terms of keeping them as tight as possible for as long as possible. People are different in this respect. Some people are naturally more careful and have smoother lifestyles. Others, like myself, are more prone to bull in a china shop type moments, and need a model that can tolerate a heavier hand. Lastly, there's a matter of cost. As I mentioned, unlike the Lynx, the Fox2 comes with both the bassinet and seat included. And don't think of this as an extra, you're paying for both. While with the Cruz V2, the bassinet is sold separately. This is relevant if you're already past the bassinet phase, the first 6 months, or alternatively, may plan on using a lie-flat car seat in lieu of a bassinet for the newborn period. Before we close out the video, I just wanted to say that if you're considering one of these two models, we recommend that you watch our standalone reviews, as they go a bit more in depth than we've done here today. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. In addition, if you are currently shopping for a stroller, we have a buyer's guide on our Patreon page which lists a wide range of models that we recommend, with a lot of technical and lifestyle related information. You can find it by following the link in the description. Thank you.